Welcome. Sorry about running a little late here. What we're going to do is begin the podcast like we always do, and then we'll have some fun. What happens now regarding your journey with marital commitment and improving your personal development is in your hands. It is how you interact with and listen to God as you engage in this experience that determines who you'll become. Our aim is to deepen your relationship with your personal development coach, God. Our time together is not meant to replace the essential connections you need to cultivate within your community. Everyone needs a place where they can be themselves, be fully honest in order to receive feedback and support. You need a support group, and this isn't it. We are here instead to enrich your relationships by offering insights about God and life that may inspire you to break free from ambivalence, encourage you to pursue new personal challenges, and enhance your interactions with those around you while aligning with God's intentions for your life. This is more than just an informational podcast. For knowledge, not grounded in human experience, won't lead to change. Our podcast is designed to be interactive, as true change requires us to acknowledge our need for growth, develop new habits, and take the risk of sharing our unique journey. During this time, you will hear from us and others alternative solutions for you to consider. But it is up to you to decide what is helpful and consistent with God's will for you. The nature of our interactions does not allow for a truly therapeutic encounter. So what you've received needs to be viewed like the Bereans. Let's see God let's seek God together as we pray this prayer, found in Psalm 139, 23, and 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. So, welcome. Excited to be spend some time with you today. And Dean, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are? We'll have Micah introduce himself, and then we'll get going here.
Okay, my name is Dean Breyer. I work with a marriage ministry called the Marriage Hub. We provide marriage intensive experiences, different from a marriage retreat. We cram 9 months of biblical based counseling into one weekend, and I followed up with a 15-week follow-up course to drive home those principles. The headquarters is in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County. And we are thankful to God for an 85% success rate. And we love partnering with people like Pennsylvania Counseling Services. A lot of times couples will come to us, they'll have their breakthrough moment, but they need more help in a therapeutic setting. And that's why we love Roy and his team. So Roy and I, the Lord led us to come together, and I'm the coach, he's the counselor, and our job is to help people grow in their marriages. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
And Micah?
Yeah. My name's Micah. I am an outpatient therapist with Pennsylvania Counseling Services. I also do a lot of work with Roy in our ministry side of things, where we serve our pastors and any individual in ministry, and coming alongside them and helping them to be able to grow in the areas that they need to grow, learn about the things that they must learn, and continue to do the work that we so need.
And one of the formats is, well, we're going to be sending you at some point at the end of each one of these a feedback time, and we believe that over a period of time, and I think this is number 5 or number 6, I'm not sure what number of these podcasts. We believe eventually doing this once a month. There literally are going to be hundreds of people that will tune in and want to talk and be a part of things. And sometimes people will give us questions, but the more interactions we have, the better we can understand the question. And so you decide whether to show your face or not. You decide what you want to say or don't want to say. And then we will respond in a way that the more we know about you, the more we can frankly assist you. So, does anybody have a particular? And we've got some questions that were sent us, but I'd like to first give people an opportunity to ask us something more verbally or in a chat presently, if you'd like, and then if not, we'll just start a conversation that hopefully gets us there. So, Dean, in your work, since we last talked about a month ago, what is there any particular marital issue that you see in the people that you work with, or in your work? And if not, we'll ask Micah to kick us off here.
There's one thing we're seeing in our marriage intensives, which is pretty consistent. We have 3 couples at a weekend, no more than 3, because we want a small group, but a safe small group. And then a trained coach couple, and then a volunteer couple. So those 5 couples enter the intensive. I would say 2 out of 3 of the couples are on their 2nd, 3rd, or 4th marriage. And if that's not the case, 2 out of 3 of them have lived together for 1 to 5 years before their marriage. We had a couple come to us. We thought they were newlyweds. They were married 1 year, and they came to the retreat with divorce papers. We're thinking, wow, that happened fast. We found out they were living together for 5 years, and everything was fine until they got married. And then something psychologically happened, and they realized they're in it for life now. It's no longer a transactional relationship where I'm performing for you, you're performing for me. We're both performing relatively well, so it's a good deal. And then you get married, and it's like, wait a minute, I don't have to perform anymore. and it goes downhill. So those are the 2 things. And 20 years ago, they would have been the furthest thing from now, maybe 30 years ago, because divorce has become very prevalent. So the big challenge is to give couples the tools to understand and recognize the past and what happened there that got them here, but then at the same time learning how to cut the chains of the past that are going to interfere with their current relationship, because we bring all these patterns and habits and relationship things into our current marriage. And if you've been through it once or twice, or if you've lived together, then there's a whole lot of times that you're missing God's design, because God's design is easy. The hard part is submitting to it and obeying it. But God's design never fails. So people come to us and they're struggling with learning, first of all, and then following God's design.
Dean, when you were talking, it's like, what's that mean that 3 or 4 times someone tried to make it work? And yet everybody I probably counseled who through the pain of a divorce, no matter how relieving, depending on the person it can feel, there's still a pain of that ultimate separation. They all said, I'm never going to do this again. All right. So everybody says they're never going to do it again. And yet the statistics slowly go up each time, that it's more likely that they do it again.
It's kind of like having a baby, you know, in the middle of childbirth, she's screaming at the husband saying, "Don't you ever touch me again. I'm never going to do this again." And then like 9 months later, maybe we should have a second child. And the husband says, "You were screaming at me during the birth." And time kind of heals a little bit of that pain.
Well, it also then too reinforces an underlying theory on marriage. And the underlying theory on marriage is, if you look at a human identity, okay, and a human identity is God-given potential, and how much of it has been grown into. You know, I have potential I didn't grow into, and I have potential I did grow into. And how much potential did we grow into? What are we able to express ourselves emotionally? Are we able, and then some crazy therapist like myself comes along and says, look, if we look at that identity, we can kind of look at how healthy that identity is. All right. And so let's say us as believers believe that Jesus Christ was a 10 when it comes to identity formation, following God the Father's will over his own, doing what God wanted. He made the perfect decisions in a wide variety of confusing life experiences, and he is a 10. All right. Well, if we make Jesus a 10, then that means none of us else are going to be 10s. Okay. So now we're looking at, if we're real narcissistic, we could think we're a 9. Okay. But I actually like to start at 8. I think we need at least 2 levels below Jesus. At least I prove that on a fairly regular basis. Okay. If I'm honest. And so, you have an 8 identity strength. And let's say you have a 1 identity strength. This person has had so much trauma or so much biological assault. Let's say they're schizophrenic, they have a psychotic process, they're not thinking. That person may not know who they are. Okay. In fact, there was a famous article written called The Three Christs of Ypsilanti. These guys all thought they were Jesus. Okay. Well, if you think you're Jesus, you're probably a 1 or a 2 down here. Okay. Because you're sure not the 10. All right. There's only 1 10. All right. So 1s connect up with 1s because they see the world the same way. 3s connect up with 3s. 5s connect up with 5s. And 8 connect up with 8s. Okay. Now, if you believe in that theory, then you'd say, wait a minute. A person gets divorced and they're a number. And because they didn't grow their identity, or what was missing that they within them that their spouse wanted, but they couldn't show up for themselves because they didn't develop that potential, and they couldn't show up for their spouse because they couldn't give their spouse any more of a healthier them than already existed. Now, if you believe that, then you go, wait a minute, that's why 3 or 4 times. Because we would say as therapists that people seek the same level of identity formation to relate to. And if it's inadequate to maintain a strong relationship, then it's not going to be, if that person's is a 5 and I'm a 5, and 5 is not the kind of relationship that keeps us, sustains us for a long-term marriage. And then I say goodbye to that 5 because 5 ain't cutting it. And now I'm a 5, and I go out and say, who do I want to date? And who I want to date is another 5. I wouldn't want to date an 8. Okay. because that 8 would demand of me certain relational aspects that I wouldn't be able to give. And so therefore, and when you look at it, it's like if you look at what couples say, well, we spent time and it flew by. It's like we knew each other during that initial coupling experience. And you listen to how they describe it, and the therapist would say, you did know each other, not specifically each other, but how you organize life was at the same level. So now, if we don't want to keep repeating the problem, and we're going to continue to date the number of us, and if we're not happy with the number we've been dating, thus we have divorce, let's look at, instead of what the other person needs to change, let's look at what we need to change. Because what I don't grow into, I torture my wife by. Because how I torture her is I expect her to make up for what I am not. And no matter how sharp she is, she can't be another me the way God wants me to become a stronger me. And then here we go. So when you see that repetition, then go, what's that mean? And so when working with couples, I say, if you can win where you lost, you can win anywhere. But to win in the marriage where you lost, you need to change. And you need to look at what you can offer that's a better deal to the other one. And that's way more likely to work, okay, that you improve and then the other person improves and then you improve and you work your way up towards that 8.5, or what theologians would call sanctification, becoming more Christ-like, so that then we can sacrificially give to the other person because there's something that we have allowed God to do in our lives that make us more lovable, more easy to love, less challenging to love. And we also have something inside that doesn't make us so self-protective. We don't always have to have our own way and feel strong. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were telling me about a choice a person made. And my first reaction, because I like this guy, is wow, he's acting so fragile because he couldn't own a mistake and he couldn't adjust to it. He had to hide it. Why does he have to have that sense of weakness?
I wanted to jump in because I noticed something earlier that I want to do my best to take advantage of. And I'm going to take us back a little bit, back to where Roy was talking and asking for anyone to jump in. And I don't know if this was purposeful, but I noticed that Brent and Wendy's audio turned on for a second, which makes me wonder, did they have something really important that we want to hear?
Or did he hit it and she said, turn that off?
If you guys are willing, I'd love to hear from you guys a little bit.
We don't bite. We nibble, but we don't bite.
So I was just going to set the playing field, so to speak. I am a recovering sex addict, and my wife and I are trying to work through the trauma that I caused. And it's a hard road. So we're here to do anything that we can to try to get better. And this is my third marriage, her third marriage. But we've been married for
30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Hmm.
And I can't see me without her. So
Just a question. I'm not an invasive one. Married 30 years and being married twice before, those are pretty quick ones, probably. What was the difference from the short marriages to this long marriage. What can you articulate what happened? How did you guys stay in the midst of your brokenness? Because we're all broken. We're all struggling to continue to grow in our brokenness, and grace and mercy and forgiveness. We all need it. But that's just interesting to me that you both had two marriages that didn't work out. Then you married each other, and you have just slugged it out, and for 30 years. What would you say is the glue that held you guys together?
It's funny because our therapist asked us that question.
Don't say it.
And I said crazy. It's crazy glue. My first marriage, my wife was verbally and physically abusive, and I only married her because teenagers out of high school, pregnant, joined the military to do the responsible thing and take care of her. And when I came home, I found out I didn't like her, let alone love her, and actually tried to hang it out for another year after that, and it just spiraled downhill. And then similar situation, she wasn't abusive, but it was a rebound relationship, and she ended up pregnant, and she chose not to stay with me. She wanted to have the child by herself. So
For me, I was just way too young. I was just way too young. Thought I knew so much and I knew nothing. And a big problem was incompatibility. I mean, I just had no clue.
But here you are now, 30 years. So something must be working.
Yeah.
I think both of us learned so much from our previous relationships that we understood that there has to be a bunch of give and take. You can't just demand what you want all the time. And she's better at giving than I am, obviously, but yeah. So I think she would agree. I don't want to speak for her, but that's what it's been. It's been a give and take.
Mm-hmm.
What's it going to take for you both to take the relationship to another number? In theory, this is theoretical. What's it going? What do you need to change about you?
I have
so
to
that
quit
you
lying.
can offer the person a different kind of presence in their life.
Yeah. Quit lying.
Quit lying.
Yeah. Develop a trustworthy relationship instead of a relationship based on hiding and lying or misdirecting the answer. Lying.
Mm-hmm. And what are you doing, Brent, to try to make that occur?
I have several. I'm a member of Samson Society.
Great.
And I try to do 4 meetings a week. We're doing together couple therapy with a fella from Columbus. But I'm hopeful to get some individual counseling because I've got some stuff in my past that I need to try to work on and figure out and work through. So just a lot of work to do.
That feels like to me a very good plan. Okay. And there are so many causes. Okay. For instance, when you're lying to her, okay, you lie to you before you lie to her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And yet you're aware of lying to her and you're good at it. Okay.
Yes,
But it's a scary skill to have.
Yeah.
And Wendy goes, "Well, I'm not sure I like this skill." Okay. But you're also lying to you. Okay. Because and and we can look at this for a minute, and other people feel free to join in too. Do you have any ideas what lies we tell ourselves before we lie to the other person?
I've really cut way back on the lies that I tell her.
Mhm.
It's small, insignificant lies that I'm still having struggles with, and she's catching me, and what it's causing is it's causing her to doubt the truth being told to her, because she's overhearing, like, uh I'll tell people I'm 6 foot tall. Well, I'm 5'10". Um, I guess I was talking to one of the guys after a meeting the other day, and she overheard me say that we had to evict somebody, um, when I guess we didn't actually evict her. We just served her with paperwork. So it's just, it's not what I would consider to be a lie. It was just a partial truth, I guess, which is a lie. But
My wife, Nancy, calls that, she says, Dean, sometimes you speak evangelistically. And she's right. Sometimes I embellish because it's important for me to look good in the moment. So,
well, yeah,
like
and
Roy says, talk myself. I lie to myself, and then I lie to them. But I know my motive.
yeah,
As I get in touch with my motive, I'm lying a whole lot less. One of the things that led to our marriage getting better in our 20s is we learned a principle that if you have something to prove, you have something to lose. If you have something to lose, you have something to fear. Fear always leads to anger, and anger always leads to pain. So there's a big cycle. And as soon as you stop that cycle, I have nothing to prove. I don't have to prove that I'm a tall guy. I don't have to prove that I'm a successful person. I don't have to prove anything. Then when life comes at you and threatens what you used to believe, you say, it's okay. It's okay. And now all of a sudden, you're not having to lie to yourself, to lie to somebody else, to make yourself look 6 feet, because somehow you feel like you got to prove that. I don't know if that helps or not, but that was a big breakthrough for me.
yeah, yeah. And I think part of it was that I was never affirmed as a child. So I feel very negative about myself. So I have issues with that. So I'm 6 foot tall. I'm only 170 pounds, I'm tipping the scales about 250, but
At one time, you were
Not
170.
that.
At one time.
yeah, my left.
Uh-oh, you froze. I bet you were going to say my left leg weighs 170, which is what I say.
Well, hopefully we can get Brent and Wendy back.
Looks like
Um,
looks like Larry's got a thought to add though.
yeah, Larry, let her rip.
I'm also in Samson's year 10 for me. But maybe it's 2 years now, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. I started lying again uh, about silly things. And it was he had been my sponsor, but then he was, anyway, but a guy in Samson says, "What in the hell is going on with you?" And it just shook me. I got a therapist, and she was really helpful. And because I'd done EMDR and a bunch of things before that, and a lot of it came down to you're not enough. And the thing my mother used to say to me was, "What is wrong with you?" And when I started dealing with that, and for me, what was helpful was I really dug into the parable of the prodigal son. And I mean, that was part of it in the therapy and stuff like that. And then uh, realizing that what Roy said, I lie to myself first before I lie to her, or to my business partners, my vendors. I run a business, farming, organic farming business, and I actually had a dream, and I'm not a what do you call it, signs and wonders kind of guy, but I had a dream that I'm spent a lot of time in Germany growing up and stuff like that, and so I understand the other side. I had relatives that fought on we would say the wrong side, right? The Wehrmacht and in the SS and stuff like that as well, unfortunately. But anyway, the dream was I was in Dresden, and the Allies would send 1,000 planes. You probably, if you know the history, they would send 1,000 planes to bomb, and then the first responders would come out, and then they'd wait about 3 or 4 hours, and they would send another wave to bomb again. That's not the point. The point of the dream was I was in a commercial building, and I just saw the rubble, the devastation. And as clear as I'm sitting here, he said, "This is what happens when you lie. You lie to me, when you lie to yourself. It's destructive." It scared the hell out of me, frankly. But I knew it was God. So that's what I got. I mean, I all I could say is yeah, everything you're saying that and then the mercy I felt, the grace to begin to forgive myself, because I was always said, well, forgiving yourself, that's BS and blah blah blah. It's all under the blood, and yeah, to understand, because what we do in Samson's is really in 12 step 2 is really it's private confession and absolution. We're listening to confessions, we're understanding, we're not trying to fix someone. They were offering absolution, maybe not formally, but that's what's happening. And for me, it's step 10. Continue to take personal private inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. And my sponsor, I'm in another program called Gamblers Anonymous, and so he'd been with me 7 years, and he died suddenly last year. And he'd go back to the steps. He says 12 simple steps for complicated people. And I know some Christians don't like the steps. Fine, okay, whatever. I don't care. They're very helpful for me. Mm-hmm. And for the man that I sponsored and stuff. So anyway, that's what I got. So yeah, oh my God. The Dresden bombing stream was like, it brings chills to me, because I had relatives that lived there and stuff like that. So I know the place, I know the streets, I know the river, and for God, I believe it was God to say, you know what, we're done with this. Are you done? So I wish I could say that I haven't told a lie since then, but if I have, I'm been able to, my therapist helped me to say, just to stop in the middle of it and back up and say, that's not right. That's not accurate. Can I restate that? And that has been so freeing. Like, oh, I can do that. Yeah. I'm okay. I mean, you know what I mean? I know there's no theologians here, but you know what I mean? I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to die if I back off, or even when I get in my pickup, my van and drive away, I can just, you know what? I need to tell you that wasn't right what I said. This is the accurate. So that's what's been helpful.
Larry and Brent, I feel like although you guys both still see that there's growth in what's to come when it comes to processing your own stories. You guys have done a lot of processing already, and in that, I'm curious to hear from either of you in this, because we've already talked. We lie to ourselves and then we lie to others, and one of the questions that I'm curious about is lying has a function. It's purposeful. It might not be the most moral or helpful purpose at time, but it's purposeful. And so I'm curious to hear from again either of you. When you lie to yourself or when you lie to others, what's the function? What does it mean when you lie to yourself? What does it mean when you lie to others?
Well, I could, for me, what does it mean to me, or what does it mean ethically and morally and theologically? What do you, which, I mean, there's a difference for me.
Let's hear what Larry thinks first. Then we can talk theology if we want to go down that route.
It's betrayal.
Okay.
I'm betraying trust, whether it's, I don't care if it's a vendor, my spouse, an employee, someone at church, whatever. It's betrayal because they trust me. I mean, I obviously done a lot of inner work and self, and I was trying to figure out a former marriage, what happened. And it was not being honest with myself, not being saying, I think what happened to me when I got in recovery, it's been 10 years now, is being able to talk about sin in present tense. When I walked into a 12-step meeting, I'm like, oh shit, shoot.
It's okay, Larry. Go
Yeah,
on.
they're well, I'm working on that too. So I don't need to use pejoratives. When I walked in and I like, wow, not only I'm not the only person that's suffering from this. They're talking about struggles in the present tense. I never heard anyone in the church talk that way. I know I'm in the wrong church, right? Wrong churches, whatever. But that's what helped me. So, but the meaning is betrayal for me. It's that feeling I felt in that bombed out building, looking around and saying, oh my gosh, it's destructive. It's betraying myself. It's betraying who I am. Who was I created to be? That's for me. So that's what I got.
Thanks.
So
Thanks, Larry.
let's
That was-
look at 2 inches. Okay. The 2 inches from 5'10" to 6. All right. 2 inches. We're talking 2 inches now. All right. The nature of what is the cause of that 2-inch lie? And what do you get out of 2 inches? Okay. And at least some of it is, it's about probably the next 30 seconds. That 2 inches has 30 seconds of meaning. I convinced somebody for 30 seconds that I'm 2 inches taller. Maybe you can hold on to that 2-inch memory for a minute, but it can't be that long. All right. So a lot of these lies are really fairly temporal in nature, but their effect is more eternal, or at least longer. See, because now Brent and I have a conversation. And I believe that Brent is 6 foot, and Brent knows he's 5'10". Now Brent has a couple of opinions. Roy's an idiot and can't tell between 6 feet and 5'10". Okay. That's one of his conclusions. Okay. But the second one, and that's okay, because Roy being an idiot doesn't really hurt Brent. Okay. So it's fine. Just be tolerant of me. We'll be okay, brother. But what matters more is any reaction I give to Brent. Would I have given him the same reaction if he was 5'10"? If I knew the real Brent, the 5'10" Brent, could he be cared for? And Brent says, when he says, I'm 6 foot, Brent's saying, I can't be loved at 5'10". I can only be loved if I'm 6 foot. And then after that, anybody that loves Brent basically, in his lie to himself, continues the lie. And the lie is, I fooled them. If they really knew the real me. That's when Larry said about confession in the present tense. That is a bunch of folks in that group being real with themselves fully, because it's the present tense, not the past tense. Now, if I'm Larry and I share in the present tense, and I share I'm 5'10" in my spiritual growth, not 6, and the other people respond to me and care about me, I can take their care and love in. But if I don't confess and I pretend really, really well, then I basically cut myself off from ever being healed from the I have to be 6 to be okay. Because I failed to be 5'10" and be loved. I cut myself off from love. The lie of pretending lasts for a short period of time, but the effect of it goes on longer, because if I lied to you, did you figure it out? If I lied to you, are you a fool? And therefore, if you did love me, what good is a fool who loved me, who bought my lie? And there's a whole series of things that occur when we fail to be who we are with God. And God wants us to be who we are, realistic. And then he'll take care of that. Each of you will be different, walking with God 1 month from now than you are now. If you walk with him according to his will, you will be better off. But as long as we keep pretending, it's a lie that keeps us done. Now, when you have been unfaithful and lied, it really puts the person in the other position hard, because one, they want to believe you when you're lying. They want to believe. At the same time, they recognize that, at least in that incident, and probably in their past, a lot of times that they believed I'm loved, and yet they figured out I'm not loved, that what I thought wasn't real. And so now we've got a negative mindset in that direction. And I think somebody asked a question about infidelity earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A very good question. And if people want to talk about that further, or clarify the question, we can. All right. So how do you build trust when lying is so hard? So well done that it's undermined things. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I'm not expecting anybody to like or necessarily agree with. but you got to give me credit. It's interesting. The person that was unfaithful, or both, as in some situations, I think there was a question about that. You start, everything gets so tenuous. And do I reject you? Do you reject? It's very tenuous. And one of the things that I have worked at times with couples on is building a relationship where you can legitimately doubt the other is really hard to accomplish. And if there's a way where you can pretty much know whether that person is lying or not, eventually, guaranteed, within reason, all right? And the person knows that if you do this again, I'm not going to tolerate it. I need to be loved. I need to be loved from an 8 perspective. I'll give you time to become an 8, but where I'm not going to die never knowing an 8's love. Ain't going to happen. All right. And one way to build a relationship like that, and here's where Roy gets really weird. Okay. That's your warning. Here we go. When I have a male or female saying constantly to their spouse, are you being unfaithful? All right. And there's enough history regarding that. It is really hard to get that trust built. But if I've had couples say, I'll tell you what, once a year for the rest of my life, I'm going to go get a polygraph on whether or not I was unfaithful to you in these ways. And the average person, okay, can't beat a polygraph. Costs about $600 to $800. Okay. And so now it's like once a year, I'm going to be polygraphed. And once a year, here are the questions I've answered. Did I have sex with somebody? Did I do boom, boom, boom? Now, I'm telling you, if you ask the question, did I have sex? Did I think of having sex with somebody in the last year? Okay, that's not going to be a good passable question unless the person tells the absolute truth, and the answer is yes. Okay, so we're not measuring on periodic unhealthy thoughts that people use to somehow get by.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Nobody's going to pass that test.
We're all screwed.
We're all screwed. It ain't going to happen. But so now it's like, I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to trust you from here to here. And here's the date. And here's what's asking. Now, if you flunk the test on that date, okay, you were unfaithful, whether or not you tell me. Okay, because the average person can't beat a polygraph. And if you are, it's more likely you were guilty and didn't do it and did it. But most of the time you can't. So now the couple goes, we're going to love on each other. We're going to work through it. We're going to work on our own past traumas. We're going to all work on, read things, work together with therapists to get our number up. But we're going to take that out of the equation. Okay. Because how do I convince you of anything when you know I'm good at lying? And for the most part, anybody on here would never be able to bluff a test, wouldn't be calling into this kind of system. And the only people that can beat it is a pretty good psychopath. And psychopaths don't call podcasts.
Sorry, Brent, that's not you.
And psychopaths don't say, there's some trauma in my history that I should look at. They don't care about their history. You're the problem. If you did everything the psychopath wanted, that life would be good. Okay. So you're not going to flunk. You're not going to bluff a test. You're just not going to do it. I'm just telling you. You don't have the right. You're not sick enough to beat it. So to me, then you go, okay, we're going to date. We're going to do pro-marriage stuff. Now, we're going to measure it in a year from now. Okay. We then don't argue about it. It's not an ongoing argument. The one thing that could happen is if it looks like the one person is in a playground because they already they know they're going to flunk it, and then but they'll spin out of control. They'll get worse and worse. They'll give themselves eventually away. All right. And you could say polygraph sooner. Okay. So you can say polygraph sooner. In fact, you could say we're going to bank in a year, but if we need to that year, we will. All right. Anything that restores trust again, so that you're working on other areas other than constantly this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you both work hard in your individual therapy to try to see, how can I learn to care about me? Okay. Because part of it is this: when you don't like yourself, even if the person would love you like Jesus did, which is close if the Holy Spirit's working in us, but still not a 10. All right. It's not going to matter. Okay. Because the issue isn't the other person loving me. The issue is me taking it in. They could be the Saint so-and-so, Saint Wendy. They could be so saint. Okay. And if you don't like you, it just means the person that likes me has bad taste. All right. I pity them. They have bad taste. They're trying to love me. All right. And so until we work on the past issues that cause us to block letting love in, it's never going to occur. And it's never, I won't let it in until I deal with that. And secondly, if every time we're together, I'm wondering who, did he? Okay. When he's good, he hears he failed because the question's there. When he's bad, okay, it just continues to eat away. I don't know if anybody out there has a response to that, and then Micah may want to ask a question or introduce something.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts before we skip?
Dean, what were you saying?
Good stuff, applicable stuff, relevant stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
All right, let's take a little bit of a shift. And before we take that shift, I'm going to let you guys into another scary part, and that's the mind of Dean, Roy, and I as we're hearing some of your guys' questions. And one of the things is I love the ability to receive our questions beforehand and receiving further questions as we go through, because you guys get the chance to talk to one another, and you guys get to we get to have a really cool bond. But one of the things about questions is that we can take it about 8,000 different ways. We can see a question, and we can pull it, and I might take it a different way than Dean does, or Dean might take it a different way than Roy does, or Roy's over in his whole other land and he's like above Dean and Micah. But yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask this question because I think it's a really, really good question. And if you are willing, I would love to hear more from you. Again, ultimately, it is in your hands, but I would love if we could hear from you specifically. Here is the question though, and we'll take it how we do. How can you thrive and heal attachment wounds with a dismissive, avoidant, preoccupied, anxious marriage? How do you heal from traumas without harming or blaming each other?
So, Dean, do you want to respond or do you want me to respond? How do you want to do this?
Well, when I read it, how can you thrive? So I identify that as constantly receiving, giving more than you had formerly. So if I define thriving as giving and receiving more, more and more on a regular basis, that's thriving. So we want to thrive, and then how can you thrive and heal attachment wounds with a dismissive, avoidant, preoccupied, anxious spouse? I'm gonna if it's allowed, I'm gonna replace that word marriage with the spouse, because this is obviously about the spouse. So if you have a dismissive, avoidant, preoccupied, anxious spouse, how do you heal from that without harming or blaming each other? So if I define it that way, yes, Roy, I want you to take it because it is a counseling question more than a coaching question. I think once some of the parameters are reached, then coaching can happen where you apply what you've learned to move forward. But there's a lot there. There's a lot of wounds there. There's a dismissive person that's not allowing the relationship to thrive. And then there's a concern about harming or blaming each other. So there's a lot there.
To me, and it's a sophisticated question, okay? And it seems like a person that is trying to figure out how to put words to what they're feeling. And that is a key growth factor. A key thing for us to do is to put words to what is going on inside of us. And it's very interesting to me because if you look at what Adam and Eve were asked to do, Adam and Eve were asked to rule over the earth. And part of that was to put words to what was going on. That's a hippo. That's to be able to describe or put words. They took in the garden and then they had to put words to the garden. And then as they organized the garden in their mind, they started to be able to make decisions about the garden. All right. So this individual's written a great question. And to me, the question is they're trying to figure out the garden of their thoughts and their garden of their feelings. And they're trying to put words to their feelings, what it's like to be with this other person, what it's like to feel themselves and how they respond to the other person, what they're thinking and feeling. All right. And it feels like the motivation for the question is trying to put words to a deep sense of personal pain. I want to accomplish something. I want to get close to somebody and connect up. And yet I feel this impossible wall between us. It's like I'll move towards them and then they move away. And then they come towards me and then I move away. And just like the lies that we were just talking about, because lies is just a form whereby we create our own personal pain. Because if I say I'm no good unless I'm 6 feet, that is an expression of personal pain. Because God says, I'll send my son to die for you at 5'10". All right. So God sees you as valuable. All right. That's the facts. But that's not our reality. And so pain is here, I want love, and yet it doesn't seem to ever work out. How can we somehow work through and I connect up to another human being? And just like I inferred, but we didn't go here, in the polygraph kind of situation that we talked about, this person has to say, what am I feeling that separates me from my lover or my potential lover? And how do I deal with that pain in a way that I can't change the other person? I can only change me, and then see what the other person does with the changed me. So let's say we talk about wounds, okay, that may separate me from my lover. Well, then I'd say, you need to go on a journey, okay, reading books, maybe seeing a therapist, becoming involved in a self-help system where you get support from others so that you can resolve those wounds, okay? You know, I personally have I think a fairly wounded history, okay? And yet if I don't deal with those wounds and turn them into strengths, which I can if I stick with God through it, okay, that abuse that happened here goes with me the rest of my life, which means that abusive person took me out here. Okay. And it means that that abusive wound is stronger than God's ability to intervene in my life and make me a different me over here. So I need to be able to look at those wounds, okay, and say, I'm going to deal with mine. And then I want my mate, I'll tell my mate how their woundedness affects me, but ultimately saying, for me to be in relationship with you, here are the things long term that are going to need to change. And when that person sees me spending more time working on my wounds and me becoming what God called me to be, instead of looking at them and demanding them to change, most of the time they'll hang in there and respect the efforts I'm making because they'll see it and they'll give me time to get there. And then the second thing is, so that's wounds. Okay. And then we have the word dismissive. All right. Or dismissive. All right. And avoidant, and excellent words and good words, because when I see dismissive and avoidant, I can go, I can see how that would feel in a marriage. And that would be very, very painful. Very, very painful. And it's also a sign, okay, of not feeling strong enough to help for yourself. Because if I'm scared, okay, I can say I'm scared of Micah, or I can say Micah is not worth anything. All right. And saying Micah is not worth anything, all right, makes me, in my mind, feel less weak than for me to say, I'm afraid of Micah. Now, during a moment of this, I want to take a brief break and talk about one of the deepest psychologists, counselors, human philosophers you've ever heard of. All right. And it's a man named Clint Eastwood. Okay. All right. Mr. Clint Eastwood. And in the movie, The Outlaw Josie Wales, which has some very interesting scenes to it. All right. There's a discussion. All right. That outlaw Josie Wales has at some point with an Indian chief. And he's showing up on the scene because the Indian chief captured some of his friends and is amidst of torturing them. And he shows up and he says, I'm going to kill you, Indian chief, or you're going to kill me, but you got to give me these people back. And by the time you're at this point in the movie, If outlaw Josie Wells wants to kill you, you're dead. You figured this out already. Pretty good shot. All right. He's going to do it. All right. And the outlaw Josie Wales looks at the chief and he says the following. He says, when everything you loved was butchered or raped, and that's what happened to him in his early life. He said, killing each other, beating each other up, abusing each other, however you want to say, he said, we're good at that. We're good at that.
Wow.
He says, what scares men like you and I is learning to get along. Love, the love you crave in this question is hot. You really, really want it. And God says you deserve it. You get it from Jesus, but it would be nice to get it from another human being. But it's hot. Okay? And it's hot for the other person because they're scared to give it. And it's hot for you because you don't know whether to trust it, how to take it in, whether to believe in it. It's a wide variety of things. And so as you put words to what you're experiencing in your relationship, it is helpful to start to say, am I at times, how am I in football straight arming my potential lover? How can I put that hand down? How can I let that person in? And if they hurt me, not react to the hurt against them, but to learn from the hurt and to say, if they're not safe and I can't relate to them safely, they can't be in my life. Jesus made a prayer, and the prayer was, I don't want to go to the cross. So unless, God, you call me to be a martyr and go die for these people, I don't want to go. And then God the Father says, you go. And he says, not my will, but thine be done. But that moment in time, God's saying, I'm not asking you to get beat up. I'm not calling you to masochism. I may call you, in the rare cases, to be a martyr. Okay. But I'm not calling you to get connected up with an unsafe relationship and continue to get hurt. You have to take care of yourself. If you look at Jesus, when negative people were around, he'd give them a shot. Once he figured out what they were, he remained silent, spoke in parables, and walked past them so they couldn't get him. And so when you reach out to somebody and you're working on yourself, putting words to what's stopping you from taking it in, you then love them the best you can. And if they don't respond, you mourn that loss and you say, God, how do I deal with life without expecting somebody like this to be able to love me, because this individual can't. And then you have to make the choices you have to make.
And Micah, like you said, if I was in a real counseling setting, which this isn't, I would say, talk to me about attachment wounds. Define what is the attachment wound you're suffering from, because there are many different attachment wounds that we suffer from. And then I would also say, how do you heal from traumas without harming or blaming each other? I would say, let's talk about the traumas. Are they your traumas or their traumas that makes them dismissive and distant? And try to understand those stressors that are either self-inflicted or self-experienced pain, or the other person that creates those walls. So I would take it further. Does that make sense, Roy?
It does. And in fact, I was glad you said that, because my wife and I, Jan, when we had our son and he was diagnosed with Down syndrome, it was a trauma. All right. And you can't look pretty dealing with the trauma. because in and of itself, it isn't pretty. And yet, how she dealt with the trauma and how she needed to get through it was different than how I needed to get through it. Okay. And what is really sad is when two hurting people have the same trauma or different traumas, but they all feel rejecting and painful. And yet we, instead of joining up with the one person that could understand us and somehow getting through it, we relieve our trauma by having a fight with the other individual so that it actually helps us escape what God is trying to do. He wants us to get to go walk into the pain, put words to the pain, bring the pain to Him, bring the pain to His representatives, the other people in my group, a sense of community, and then He wants us to work through it. But sadly, oftentimes people who've been traumatized don't trust. And as a result, it's actually easier to fight than to heal. Did we do okay on the question, Micah?
I feel like we did. I feel like we did what we were able to. So
That's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. We went a lot of different directions there. So turning it in light of turning it back to you guys, Brent, Wendy, Larry, any thoughts? Any comments? Anything that stood out?
Oh, let your dog be there, Larry. We love dogs. They're your best friend. She wants to.
Oh, okay. The Queen died, and so he's an English setter, so he's very entitled. So, as I was, so just a technical matter. I deal with I have several guys who are you call them sponsees, whatever, asylees, and a couple of them are going through. They have a C each. They have he has a CSAT. He's a sex addict. He has a CSAT. She has a therapist, and then they go through uh, uh, therapeutic disclosure, right? And in one case, he failed the polygraph. They had a polygraph. It's like a $15,000 program, okay, all in for a year and a half or so. And then so I'm walking with him, and then he gets honest, and then he passes the next one, you know. And that was how trust was rebuilt with him. So I actually know of a therapist who actually, well, he was public, so his name is Ro Hunter, and he was at a Samson retreat 2 years ago, and he's been in recovery for 30 years, and he goes a polygraph every year. So I'm not sure if I have that kind of balls, but I think that, and I understand part of what Roy said was, I'm not sure metaphor is a good word, but how can I work through that? I mean, because honestly, that's for me, the polygraph for me is the man or a couple of men around me that know me very well. And when I stop showing up, they know. Mm-hmm. So I so appreciate Roy's call to safety. Don't stay in an unsafe relationship. But anyway, that's what I've got to say. I was an abuser, and I owned that. But it took a brave man to say, you know what, you were abusive. He didn't say that. He said, in my experience, in this situation, when I was there, I was abusive. And I thought, oh, that means I was abusive. My behavior, my compulsive behavior was abusive. So I just think if I stop growing, I will die. So that's
You
what
know,
I got.
Larry, what that guy did, and I'm not saying everybody has to do it. I am saying that at times maritally, that takes something off the table that will allow both to concentrate on their growth, uh, because uh, nobody's worrying about who's sneaking what. But what I like about the guy doing it is one of the biggest issues in acting out, as one term we would use, okay, is the lie, no matter how much it hurts us eventually from taking in love, that nobody will know.
Mhm.
Okay. And this guy goes in every year and he says, I've thought about all these choices, but every year when I do this, one other person will know. And if that one other person, whoever it is, keeps him from making that choice. In fact, in some ways, that polygrapher represents Jesus to him.
Mm.
Okay. And we can deny what Jesus knows. He knows our secrets, but we sure don't think about that in the middle of following a secret now, do we? All
Yeah.
right. And this guy has created a physical expression of God with the ultimate factual accountability. And he says, as I put this through my life, this system helps me.
Yeah.
And I go, way to go. Okay. Because if you find that you can't tell yourself a lie, if you know you're going to schedule the polygraph, and if that's what helps you not lie, way to go. It's money well spent because it is what keeps that right choice going.
Exactly.
Now, another way we do it with couples is if the man's struggling with sexual addiction, then he goes through a very long, difficult purging of his phone. And then his wife has access to that phone anytime she wants. And I tell the wives, you check it as much as you want until you don't have to check it. Because there'll come a time when you are telling the husband, no matter how much you perform, I will never trust you because I'm checking it 8 times a day. So if you have to check it 8 times a day, the husband understands that. But in a week, maybe check it 7 times. And a week later, maybe check it 5 times. And within 2 months, say, I don't have to check that because I know you're a good man. I know you've changed. I know your heart's different. But whatever it takes, whatever process you need to grow that trust is an action. Forgiveness has to be given freely because we are forgiven in Christ. We can't forgive freely. We can never get to trust. Forgiveness doesn't mean you got away with it. Forgiveness doesn't mean you don't have to change. Forgiveness means I'm not going to let your brokenness impact my heart and spirit anymore. And I'm going to expect you to act like the forgiven person that I'm forgiving. It's a different person. A forgiven person walks differently. They act differently. Their head's up higher. And when you see that person with their head down, you know they're struggling. So why push them down further? Call them up. Say, what's going on? I feel horrible. I blew it. I watched that show. I know I shouldn't have, and I enjoyed it. And then you give grace and mercy. We all know that's going to wreck you. And I'm proud of you for telling me. Thank you for telling me. Let's pray about it. God, give us the strength to resist those things. How about we do this? How about we read to each other so that we're not tempted to look at media? See what you're doing? You're loving each other. You're encouraging each other in your growth out of brokenness into wholeness.
How about the AA called it the 500-pound phone? How about before I'm acting out, I'm feeling lonely, sad, etc. Call my sponsor, call somebody and say, I'm struggling.
Yes. Yes.
That was the key, like 9 years ago. That was the key for me when I stopped white knuckling, and saying, I can't do this.
Hmm.
I can't do this alone.
We weren't meant to do it alone. I'm proud of you, both of you guys, for having sponsors.
What last night we talked about brotherhood at my in-person sales meeting, and the thing was like, if Jesus needed 3, good Lord, how can I do with none? Just let that drop.
Brent, what's going on? What are you thinking?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate Roy saying just, just having that polygraph to stop the questions about are you still cheating, whatever, are you still looking at pornography, just having that would, right now we're a year in, and I really thought that today was the end of it, because I made a comment that was misunderstood, and then I did what I typically do, which is try to run away and hide rather than dealing with the comment. And I really thought she was just done with me. And I mean, I'm not guaranteeing that isn't the case, but just having that off the table, where that she trusts, she has the polygraph that says that this is what's happened. And we already did a disclosure, but it wasn't a disclosure with polygraph. So yeah, just
Brent, it's a great idea until you want to act out again and you know the crazy thing is scheduled. So you just got to know it. And at that moment, I want to tell you, brother, you ain't going to beat it. And the day of reckoning is there.
yeah.
Now, the best way to pay the day of reckoning, deal with the day of reckoning, is to make sure you do what God has called you to do before the day of reckoning.
Mm-hmm.
3 days before the day of reckoning, it's too late.
Yeah.
Because it's going to light up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea until the addict says someday, and the addict will, it's okay. It's a battle. And the addict's going to say, why'd you listen to that idiot? Okay. And if you're going to listen to the idiot, sure as heck don't make sure Wendy's listening to the idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very inconvenient.
Mm.
Okay. But, it's too late now, Brent.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to have a certifiable, trusting relationship so that you can concentrate on 1,000 other very important issues
Right.
that you two have to look at. Your past, what you both have to, forgiveness, growing through things, a wide variety of issues. So
Yes.
it's not done yet. But
Mhm.
the conversations in those other areas is going to be way more productive, okay, than
Mhm.
you trying to prove something you can't prove
Mhm.
because you were really bad at doing it to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea, but someday your addict's going to go, I wonder if I can beat that thing. Okay. And at that moment, I am telling you, you will flunk. So the best thing to do is not to do it. And then, Wendy, what I would say is this, let's say it's scheduled at the end of the year and you start to worry. Okay. Imagine the relief you feel. Okay. Because when you're worrying, that worry is a wall between you and Brent. All right. It is not helpful. It's true when he deserves it, but not helpful to you. Okay. Because he can love you the best. And at that moment, the worry stops. Look, for $700 or $800, if you can take care of your worry, all right, you go get it done. He passes it. 3 months later, you can polygraph him again. If you can live for a year with a heck of expense on polygraphs, but there's not any worry,
Yeah. Oh, it would be
eventually
worth
you'll
it.
work your way out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually, that was something I had wanted and asked for, and our therapist was kind of against it, and I got resistance from Brent too. So yeah.
Well, I told you the attic part of him wasn't going to like it. But today he's desperate. So we got him right where you need him, Wendy. And technically, he agreed. And a series of witnesses here, he agreed. So this could happen. Let me read something.
Strictest confidence.
What's this?
Strictest confidence.
Yeah, I know. We signed that, so yeah, you're safe. You're safe
right.
outside of this place.
Larry, give you 30 seconds and then we got to be done.
Oh no, before you go, he'll never show this to you because he's a humble guy. This is his book, okay? Two Becoming One. Roy Smith. Please go get it. It's one of the most comprehensive books on marriage I've ever read. And as a marriage coach, I'm using this with my couples and it's tremendous. So please get it. It's a great investment in your marriage.
Well, thank you. And our editors are listening to some of this, so they appreciate it, because without my editors, you couldn't understand it. All right. And we have a second one coming out probably by the end of the year. Larry, did you want to say something?
15 seconds.
Yep.
Amen.
Wow. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You're not going to die. I thought I was going to die. You are not going to die. I've seen the brightness in Wendy's eyes. I'm like, wow, you got someone there. Do the work, baby. Do the work. That's what I got.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, we need to wrap up our podcast for today. But the good news is Jesus continues to finish his good work within you. And as he transforms you, you'll begin to see life's biggest challenges as holy moments. Acknowledging our sinful choices, emotional struggles, and relational difficulties is not an easy task. Today's holy moment prompted us to reflect closely on our responsibilities, allowing us to collectively seek God's strength for change. Please help us and feel free to invite anyone you know who could benefit from these discussions. Now, may God bless you with strength to practice Ephesians 4:2-3. Now, right now is an important holy moment in my life. All right. Because what you don't know is my wife is in this studio over somewhere out there listening. And I wanted to share with her the following thing, because I did not the other day live according to this verse. And I wanted to share with her, I do these marital things that we do here, and she knows it. And I blew this verse 3 days ago. All right. So we're going to end this verse, and then her and I are driving for a couple hours and we'll discuss it. All right. Here we go. Ephesians 4:2-3. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourself united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Now remember, God is quite the conversationalist, so talk and listen to God today. God bless.